Well, I'm kind of bored, and I feel like doing a stupid experiment just because I'm kind of curious. Data points that no one asked for, but I'm going to give you anyway. You know how on the old like Pentium systems and stuff, like you'd have the CPU and it had a cooling tunnel that would like mount up with a hole in the side of the case so that the blower only pulled cold air from outside? Well, we're going to make one for our 5700 blower card. A lot of people bought the early 5700, 5700 XTs, which had these blowers on them. And then the custom cards came out later. So we're gonna head to Lowe's and we're gonna get some stuff and see if we can't make a thing. Tired of all the extra cables in your system? Well, Fractal Design has you covered with their new Ion series power supplies. Available in a variety of sizes and wattages, the new fully modular Ion Plus series of power supplies have what you need for clutter-free reliability. To learn more, click the link below. So here's what we got. A better pipe cutter that I said I needed for cutting the tube because I had that little bitty one. This is unrelated, but now I can easily cut my tube better.
3 months later.
These are fittings for my dripper system in my backyard because my husky keeps eating my drippers, so I keep having to replace them. And then we got a hole saw and some different PVC connections. Now we were a little concerned because here's the problem. Given the size of this opening here, 2-inch, as you can see, is too small. I think most people would agree. Next video, we just glue it to it and turn it on. Anyway, so we've got this reducer. Technically it's a reducer because it's a 3 to a 2-inch. So as you can see, this is the perfect size to fit like over the opening. But the problem is if you look in there, we're actually choking down a little bit. I think a 2.5 would have been perfect, because this is stepping down to a 2, it's a 3-inch to a 2-inch reducer. The problem is apparently there's no such thing as 2.5-inch PVC pipe at like Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever. So this is what we're stuck with, but it still fits within the edges of the GPU. So then we've got this guy here to make the turn. And then I'm not sure if that's gonna be enough to make it to the edge. And if not, I got this piece so we can extend it out to make it to the edge of the case. And then we've got a hole saw to cut the opening in our case, which probably won't line up perfectly because I really suck at eyeballing things and I don't like to measure. So that's our idea. Now I would have loved to have just used a riser card and then had a straight piece, because anytime you introduce any sort of curve or bend, you do increase the resistance. Now we're hoping that the radius of this is smooth enough to where it won't really do that. And I'm also hoping that the choke point, or it being choked like this, down to a 2-inch, isn't gonna be an issue. But before we do all this, we need a baseline. We need to know exactly in this chassis, in this current ambient temperature, blah, 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 what is our control, our baseline? Because if we don't have that, we have no idea if there was an improvement or we did ourselves a disservice. How does install graphics cards? Okay, so here's our control. We're gonna use superposition actually, not heaven, because superposition is harder on GPUs. We've got our chassis fan set to a static 40%. CPU fan curve is set to normal, although that won't matter until we do the Cinebench run. We'll talk about Cinebench in a second and why we're gonna do that. And we've got the GPU set to a static 43%. Now the reason why I chose 43% is we tested this already to see where the max fan curve was out of the box, and 43 is where it stopped. So we went ahead and just set it there manually, because what we want to do is kind of reduce the chance of our test being skewed because of the fan curve moving around, because it's only going so far. So we wanted to lock it down, and then we can kind of take a look at the GPU's clock speed, take a look at the tachometer, the tachometer, and all that sort of stuff. But basically what we care most about is at the end of a 10-minute run right now, we're gonna record what our max temperatures are on both edge temp and junction temperature. And then Phil wants to add a test to this where we're gonna test a heat-soaked chassis, because the GPU being a blower style cooler, we've said this a million times, will not affect the chassis temp nearly as much as something that has multiple fans on it blowing air into the chassis, where the chassis fans have to remove that air. It's removing its own air through its own blower. So I don't think this test right here is gonna be really affected by this because of the fact that it's already getting extremely cool air, because there's nothing else heating up the air inside the chassis. So what Phil wants me to do is, after this 10-minute run and we record these best case scenario temperatures, we're gonna run Cinebench R20. And so we're gonna get the air inside, the volume of air inside of here nice and warm, and then run this test again. I tend to think that I should set a few cores set to run this bench, or this test bench going while, or this benchmark going while Cinebench is running, keeping the air consistently warm. My concern here is that the chassis air is gonna cool down the chassis faster than the 10 minutes it's gonna take for us to record our temperatures with our cold air intake. So I don't know, we'll see what we decide to do when this 10 minutes is up, but I kind of feel like we need to keep the air temperature in there consistent to see if this works. Kind of simulating a game that is very CPU bound as well as CPU bound, or yeah, CPU bound as well as GPU bound. So that's kind of my methodology there. Lots of different ways we could have tested this, but that's the way we're going with. And there's no vents anywhere on the sides of these chassis. The top is actually got the filters on there, which are blocking up a lot of that air, but there's no fans up here on top. So the only exhaust fan is the one right here in the back, which as I can feel is cool air coming out. So that's why, so far, a few minutes into this test, we've kind of normalized already with our edge temp at 66C and our junction temp bouncing between 77 and 78, and our core clock bouncing between 1690 and 1720 or so. But as you can see, our RPM and our speeds right there are locked. So, all right, we will go ahead and start Cinebench. We will start that. The CPU like I can't even drag a window. So I decided I'm gonna go ahead and block off the exhaust fan. So all we have then is positive pressure from the front, because with the exhaust fan right next to that blower cooler, it feels like it's bringing the heat out before we can heat up the chassis. And for the sake of our test, we need the chassis to get warmer. But Jay, it looks like you're causing all these problems yourself. That's what my wife says, stop it. This is science, sort of, whatever. So channeling my inner Kyle, I've decided I'm gonna go ahead and tape up my case. But Jay, you're just copying Kyle. Yeah, I know, duct tape, he invented it. But what I'm trying to do here is block off the vent right above the CPU cooler once again. Because remember, this is a downfire CPU. So that was too short. I'm trying to make it we're trying to saturate the temperatures in there. And then at the end of the day, this is a pretty pointless test. But I was bored and I wanted to do stuff science-wise. Well, the tape and stuff is certainly warm. We are sitting at 92 on the junction temp and right around 79 to 80 on the edge, which is funny because it's still not nearly as hot as we were thinking it would go. If it was an XT, then I think for sure. The irony is we were like, it's nowhere near as hot as if it was gonna be an Intel or an NVIDIA setup. It's kind of funny. It's like the tables have certainly turned. So now that we've done that, I guess it's now time to do the completely useless and unnecessary mod, because we like to mod stuff around here. This is your captain speaking. If you look at the right side of the aircraft, you can see Uranus. The planet, not your butt. So I just realized we're both fortunate and unfortunate that this clears the power supply because it's really long. This is where a bigger tower would come in handy, but all my other big towers here are tempered glass, which isn't gonna work. Which means that I'm gonna be drilling into the curved part down there. Oh, this is gonna suck.
It looks like a Super Mario pipe.
I know, right? Look at that, that was perfect, all the way around. Dude. That works too well.
It's even like matte black. Like
fitting right here was an accident. I'm making a circle, man. A perfect circle. Got any Vice Grip garage fans out there? She'll run. Give her a little fire starter and a little a guy might think that this is unnecessary, but that guy also doesn't have any money, so. I love Vice Grip Garage so much. I hope someone else watches him. All right, moment of truth. Does it line up? Hey, hey, hey. That's factory. That's how you extendometer. Typo, cuz.
Extendometer.
The extendometer. That is clearly the cleanest cuts of any cut that's ever been cutted in the history of cuts. And here's the thing, it's threaded so you could screw on a cap when you're not using it to get air off of it. I'm gonna start with just the GPU. What we're gonna see right now should be the same as when the CPU is running. Right, so when the CPU is in there making the chassis warm, the GPU now shouldn't care. All right, so our temperatures right now are 65, 76, and they're bouncing between 76 and 78 on the hot side, and 65 to 67 staying usually more around 65 on the cold side. So we lost about 2 degrees versus our control, which is kind of funny because we have all the tape on here, which we didn't have on the control. However, we are isolated from the chassis. So that really doesn't make any difference whatsoever. Now, one thing to point out is our AC just turned on right now too. When we did our first control, it was 71 degrees Fahrenheit in here. The AC turns on at 73. So we were actually 2 degrees Fahrenheit hotter on this particular test with all the tape on the chassis, which means that we truly did isolate the GPU from the chassis, which gives me good hopes for this next test. I'm expecting to see significantly less temperatures than what we had in our last hot test. Now the last test with all the tape on here, with the CPU running with the Cinebench R20 looping, we saw a temperature of 79 on the cold side and 92 on the hot side. So if we see anything less than that, then this stupidity did something. It's like exactly the same temperatures as it was without the CPU test going and Cinebench running back there in the background. It works! Who would have freaking thought? There's one more part to this test I kind of want to try. It's coming down.
Oh, dude!
Almost 10 degrees.
What?
So clearly that worked. All right, look, here's the bottom line. This is unnecessary unless you just want to come up with some cool mod theme. Then that is kind of neat. But you know what people were doing when these first came out and people realized they could get hot, especially the 5700 XT? They would find an old cooler off like a 290X or something because the bolt pattern around the die was the same. And so you could get yourself a nice heat sink with heat pipes and multiple fans and just mount it. And then put little sticky heat sinks on your memory if you want, your VRMs, and call it a day. This is unnecessary, however it worked. And I'm happy to report that because I spent about $30 on materials. But not only did I spend $30 on this, some of you might argue that this isn't science. But you know, in the wise words of Adam Savage, the only difference between messing around and science is writing it down. I'm JayzTwoCents. Thanks for watching.